Understanding inflammation is so important nowadays because inflammation really is at the root of almost every disease that I see. Whether I'm dealing with something cognitively, or I'm dealing with an autoimmune condition, or a hormone condition, or a mental health condition, it seems like inflammation is really the driver. In this video, I want to do a couple of different things. We're going to talk briefly about inflammation, recognizing the signs and symptoms, how to check it, and then some of the supplements you can take to help beat inflammation. All right, let's dive in. We got a lot to do. Number one, inflammation is the process of the body acting out against itself. We are seeing inflammation in so many different ways. Now, there's the obvious where you have joint pain, joint swelling, you feel achy. A lot of patients will tell me they just feel old and they don't know why. Those are some of the hallmark, more conventional signs of inflammation. But there are many others. Not being able to focus, feeling tired all the time, having trouble sleeping, having anxiety or depression. Those are signs of neuroinflammation, meaning inflammation up through here. In addition to that, many of our hormone-based conditions are actually rooted in inflammation. So this is everything from Hashimoto's to PCOS to endometriosis. And those symptoms of inflammation are often things that we don't think of maybe as inflammatory. Heavy periods, painful periods, not being able to have a regular period. Again, you got it, all inflammatory, as is the inability sometimes to get pregnant. So as you can see, inflammation is wound up in our bodies and can present in so many ways. I got to include two more. If you're getting sick all the time, more than likely your body has a really high inflammatory load. So another way that inflammation can present, and we're just not aware that we're dealing with inflammation. So where do you begin? Where do you start? Well, oftentimes, if you're like, yes, I've got the symptoms, I have any of these, brain fog, tiredness, achiness, hormone irregularities, joint pain, joint swelling, muscle weakness, trouble focusing, anxiety, depression, you name it, I want to know if I have inflammation. Then oftentimes, your next step is to go into the doctor's office and you might do some lab work. Here's what I'd like you to look out for in your lab work. If your white count is low, right, you have a lower than average white count, that's a sign of low-grade inflammation. If a number like your CRP or your SED rate is high, that's also a sign of inflammation. But sometimes all those numbers are normal, but you still have this like chronic inflammatory fatigue and no one can put their finger on it. Here's a hint, go deeper. Look at things like a TGF-beta or a C4A, or even look at IgG subclasses. These are lab values tied to inflammation that are often missed until your symptoms are way advanced, and I don't want that for you. So that's a rough overview of what inflammation is, how it could be presenting in your body, and what you can do to check it and monitor it. Now you're asking, what do I do about it? Well, it all begins, and we've talked about this before, with an anti-inflammatory diet. If you want more tips on an anti-inflammatory diet, check this video out right here. I have lots of videos on how to beat inflammation, what an anti-inflammatory diet looks like, and what you really need to be thinking about. But let's dial in now to the supplements that might be helpful if we're dealing with the condition of inflammation. And I'm going to start where I often start. Please don't roll your eyes. I'm going to start with the gut. We know that the majority of the inflammation we see nowadays comes from the gut. And so one of the things we really want to do is rebuild the gut lining, put in good gut bacteria, I talk about that in this video right here, and really improve the quality of food you're consuming and the ability of your belly to break it all down. Well, two of my products that I actually came up with because I'm so passionate about the gut are all about inflammation. The Belly Fix has glutamine and collagen in it, pre and probiotics, ginger, turmeric, all of which are put together in a powder form to help with inflammation. At the same time, Collaglow was designed to rebuild that leaky gut or that weak intestinal lining because we know a lot of inflammation starts right there. All right, so those are two powders focused on the gut. Where do you go from there? Well, let's talk about it for a second. One of the things I love in terms, I've mentioned it, about beating inflammation is using curcumin. And we know curcumin brings the inflammatory load down. In fact, I've used it in many different forms. This particular one is a product from Banyan, but there are many others. But curcumin helps to lower the inflammatory load. So it does help with symptoms like joint pain or achiness or muscle fatigue or many of these things that folks complain about. Now, the recommendation, though, for reversing inflammation is about 2 to 3 grams a day. That's a lot more. Sometimes you're like, well, I can eat turmeric, I can put it in my food. You're not getting the dose that's really going to reverse inflammation, so keep that in mind. All right, the other one I love are the omega-3s. We have a couple of different varieties here from Nordic, which is actually one of my favorite brands for omega-3s. Omega-3s do help lower inflammation. I've been noticing, and if you guys have noticed this before, I've been noticing in the research recently that there are a lot of studies coming out against omega-3s. Omega-3s help reduce inflammation. In fact, there's a particular product that we carry in practice at Center Spring MD that takes a compound from curcumin and a compound from omega-3, puts it together, hyper-concentrates it, and it actually acts like an anti-inflammatory. It's miraculous in being able to reverse many of the symptoms of inflammation. Okay, let's try a few others. Vitamin D. We got to talk about vitamin D. So vitamin D deficiency is rampant. I see it all the time in my patients. I really want these vitamin D levels to be above 50 anytime you go to check it, and they can get as high as 100. So many folks are like, oh no, my vitamin D is too high. 50 to 100 is okay. And that's the dose that seems to also reduce inflammation. And a lot of our autoimmune patients, we see a lot of vitamin D deficiency. So vitamin D is a good one too. And then let's add in some of the minerals. Zinc is a really important one as well to lower inflammation. It helps with many of the different pathways. Magnesium too. Magnesium is another one that I love. The dose of each, zinc is about 15 milligrams a day, while magnesium averages around 400 milligrams or so a day. So those are some of my favorite supplements for managing inflammation. Now that's probably layer one. There's so many more. I love boswellia. I love frankincense oil. I mean, I could go on forever. There is a really big toolbox for inflammation. So if you're suffering from any of those symptoms, right, that we rattled off right in the beginning, and you're not sure where to begin, it's a good idea to get those basic labs checked to understand where you are, and then to start matching maybe a few of these to see if your symptoms reverse. So it's diet, supplements, a healthy lifestyle, and you're on your road to beating inflammation. All right, don't forget I post new videos every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe.